This Rise and Shine podcast series has been made possible by the generosity of the Zeidelman Family Foundation, which is committed to the unity and continuity of the Jewish people through meaningful and relevant Jewish education and wisdom.
Vulnerability leads to joy and meaningful connections with others. As Adam and Eve discovered quickly, even though the nature of humans is to hide and evade when we feel exposed and naked, well, hiding does not work.
This is Rise and Shine, a podcast that offers timeless wisdom and uplifting meditations to fill your heart, feed your soul, and start your day on a positive note. Here is Adrienne Gold Davis.
Over the past few years, a great deal of literature, research, and commentary have come out as to the power and the strength of vulnerability. Brené Brown, that great Texan TED Talk queen, researcher and social scientist, wrote a best-selling book about it. A synopsis of her thesis is as follows. 1, that shame is a universal experience, and 2, that courage and self-compassion allow us to embrace vulnerability. The third was that vulnerability leads to joy and meaningful connections with others. And lastly, Brown reiterates and emphasizes that embracing vulnerability can help us lead fulfilling lives with wholeheartedness. So memes abound on social media saying things like, find your strength and your power and your vulnerability, and even the concept of anti-fragility emphasizes this. Generally explained as follows, anti-fragility is a property of systems in which they increase in capacity to thrive as a result of stressors, shocks, volatility, noise, mistakes, faults. These notions have been thematically at the forefront of our cultural zeitgeist for close to a decade now. But doesn't it seem oxymoronic? How can the very thing that makes us feel exposed and weak and fearful be the birthplace of our strength and power? So, one of my favorite games is to find supposedly new concepts in old sources, the oldest and most original sources of the human condition. At the very beginning of our Torah, the book of Genesis gives us a story about the human condition that clearly shows us the consequence of hiding to ourselves and from ourselves and to others. We learn that when Adam and Chava, or Eve as she's typically known, ate from that tree of knowledge of good and evil, they ate the forbidden fruit. And upon doing so, we learned that their eyes were opened and that they saw their own nakedness. Now, before that, we read that they walked through the Garden of Eden naked and not ashamed. So upon this first sin, they become obviously corporeal to themselves. And that was followed by instant shame and embarrassment, and they went to hide. God calls out to them, giving them several opportunities to take ownership for what they'd done. He asks them where they are. They respond by saying, I heard your voice in the garden and I was afraid because I was naked, and so I hid myself. God repeatedly tries to engage them, asking questions that he clearly knows the answer to, just like we do with small children. We ask them questions, not because we don't know that they stole that cookie or ate the frosting off the cake or stole that bicycle or hit their sibling. We ask so that they'll own their own behavior and take responsibility. We parents know that a simple, yes, Mommy, it was me and I'm really sorry, goes much further than lying and evading. And it's our job as adults to apprentice our children's immature characters by dedicating the values of honesty and mutual responsibility. The lies that small children tell are not indicators of some pathology. They're there so we can teach them not to lie, not to hide. Because, as Adam and Eve discovered quickly, even though the nature of humans is to hide and evade when we feel exposed and naked, well, hiding does not work. Moments of evasion, of truth, continue even after Cain kills his brother Abel out of jealousy that God preferred Abel's sacrificial offering to Cain's. Cain couldn't bear to see the evidence and the source of his mistake, and he tried to eliminate the source of his discomfort, to hide it in the most absolute of ways. And when God asks him where his brother Abel is, knowing full well what he had done, he replies in that most ridiculous and evasive way, saying, Am I my brother's keeper? The mark of Cain's refusal to just do better tomorrow, to not bury the pain of rejection, but own it and use it as a springboard for self-improvement, is just another version of the first story. And so it goes. If the ability to tell the truth rather than bury it is so difficult, then it stands to reason that it's going to make us stronger when we fight against that urge. Like any other form of resistance training, the muscles of good character, of honesty, of belief in what we're capable of must be exercised. And the aching muscles after a workout, just as they indicate the beginning of building strength, well, telling the truth, even when it makes us look bad or flawed or human, is how we grow strong. And there is no greater workout for building power and strength than the self-control and transparency it requires to truly evolve our souls. In Genesis, Cain's countenance falls in self-pity and disappointment when God prefers the efforts of his brother to his own. And God then says something powerful that we all need to internalize whenever we mess up. He says to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, will not your countenance be lifted up? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it." And it came about, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. When we try to hide from or metaphorically kill off that which reminds us of our vulnerability, our mistakes, our naked humanness, we can come to a level of lowness that we might come to kill the thing that reminds us of these traits. But God's assurance that we can master this urge, that we can get up and try again and get it right, is the original source of the notion of vulnerability as the birthplace of strength and true power. This week, can we stop hiding from our Creator, from ourselves, from our fellow, and strengthen our core by doing better tomorrow? Can we do the spiritual Pilates that builds that core strength that we need to endure the vicissitudes of life? Not to tell others to do so, but to do it ourselves, to model the naked honesty and vulnerability that unconsciously permits others to do the same, because we live in a kind of an Eden. To quote the great Joni Mitchell, "We are stardust, we are golden, and we've got to make our way back to the garden."
Thanks for listening to Rise and Shine. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Momentum Podcasts on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Join Adrienne again next time for more timeless wisdom and uplifting meditations that fill your heart, feed your soul, and start your day on a positive note.
This podcast was sponsored by the Zeidelman Family Foundation. Spread the wisdom. Inspire Jewish individuals around the globe by supporting Momentum's podcasts. To sponsor, contact podcast@momentumunlimited.org. You're listening to a Momentum podcast. For unlimited inspiration, wisdom, and empowerment, visit momentumunlimited.org.